Good morning, everyone. Let me start this presentation. Actually, I misunderstood that the professor gave us 5 minutes for each team, not each person. However, I'll make it to the 5. Okay. This topic is the carbon tax, and we're focusing on what benefits it can give, and the reason that we support the carbon taxes. First, let me introduce about the definition of the carbon taxes. As in the Wikipedia, the carbon tax is an environmental tax related on the carbon contents of the fuel, and it is form of the carbon pricing. The meaning of the carbon pricing is that they define the taxes for the how much based on how much the carbon is produced for each of the company. And the reason they are focusing on the carbon is because when the carbon fuels are burned up, they emit the CO2, and most of scientists, as the CO2 is known as the heat trapping greenhouse gases, which means that if they are emitted to the air, then they just trap the heat. So and that's why we are experiencing global warmings more. And there are 2 characteristics of the carbon taxes, and the first one is that it is called the Pigovian tax, and Pigovian tax. And what it means is that it helps to address the problem of emitters of greenhouse gases and not facing the full cost of their actions. So there are some of the examples of the Pigovian taxes, but the main focus is that they address the issues. So, for example, in case of carbon tax, they just as they placing the carbon tax, so they force the firms to pay the carbon tax. They're like to force the firms to emit the CO2s less than there before. And the second characteristic is that they're called regressive tax. And regressive tax is a disproportionate tax levied on the firms, but most of the regressive tax puts a high burden on the low-income groups. Consider the situation: if there are farm A and B, and if they emit the same amount of gases, who will gonna affect more? Who has the more burden? Of course, the small farms will have more burden because they, even though they emit the same amount of carbon dioxide, the small farms have the lower budgets, so they might have the hard time to, pay the taxes. So because of that, most of countries had a hard time to implementing the carbon taxes because it, economically, it is a big burden for the countries. So some of the European countries are now adopting the carbon taxes, but in the situation in Korea is quite different. Even though the President Lee Myung-bak always says the green finance and everything, he always talks, as you know, and the direct taxation system is not applied in the South Korea yet. And many users like USA, as Jae-hyun showed before, many large users of the carbon resources, such as USA and Russia and China, are resisting carbon taxations. And for the second part, due to the Kang Jong-ho.
Hello, my name is Kang Jong-ho, and let me start the presentation. So the main reason to support carbon tax is global warming. This is global temperature from 1880 to 2010, and as shown in the graph, global temperature has increased, especially from 1980s. The red line indicates Arctic ice boundary in 1979, and since 1979, more than 20% of the polar ice cap has melted away. This is clear evidence of global warming. In fact, it's controversial whether CO2 is a main reason of global warming. However, IPCC, an international organization established to cope with climate change, reported that CO2 emitted by humans plays an important role in global warming. Thousands of scientists and other experts participated in the report, and it is a scientific consensus that we have to reduce CO2 emission to avoid catastrophe. Carbon tax is a strong and efficient way to reduce CO2 emission. Another reason to support carbon tax is that fossil fuel is a limited resource. Modern civilization critically depends on fossil fuel, especially oil. Though there is much worry about oil depletion, oil consumption has rapidly increased. Unless we do not change our economic system heavily based on oil, our civilization will eventually collapse. It will be too late if we directly feel the crisis. Carbon tax will provide incentive to reduce fossil fuel consumption and to develop and use alternative energy. Furthermore, the funds raised from carbon tax can be used to subsidize alternative energy or to solve other environmental problems such as Amazon rainforest. I believe that this will help achieve sustainable development and improve our quality of life in the long run. So, in conclusion, carbon tax is an important issue now, and we believe that carbon tax is needed for the future. Global cooperation is essential in implementing carbon tax. To achieve global cooperation, advanced countries which already have emitted enormous CO2 have to actively support other countries. This is for everyone on the earth. Thank you.